Bright Cutie. Every student matters.
Hello students, today we will be taking up chapter 3 from your English reader textbook. The name of the chapter is Gopal and the Hilsa fish. Well, this chapter suggests that it is some person and he has a story revolving around a Hilsa fish, probably some kind of fish. But let me tell you, this story is a comic strip. Have you ever read a comic book? Well, I have read Garfield, Dennis the Menace, Peanuts. Have you read any of them? Even now, Garfield is very famous. Alright, so before starting the chapter, let us read the snippet to understand what is this chapter all about. Alright, so chapter 3. Before you read, let us read the snippet. Have you ever read a comic book? A comic book contains stories told mainly through pictures, right? So there are stories which are basically based on the pictures. Alright, so let's start the chapter. It was the season for Hilsa fish. Fishermen could think of nothing but Hilsa fish. So it was the season, as in the weather, the season was of the Hilsa fish. Hilsa is a variety of fish. Fishermen could think of nothing but Hilsa fish. Fishermen whose job was to catch fishes, their thought process was only to catch Hilsa. They could think of nothing else. Fishmongers sold nothing but Hilsa fish. Come, buy, the price of Hilsa is down today. And then the fishmongers means the people whose job is to sell fishes. So they used to sell nothing else but only Hilsa fish. And then they used to call customers, by calling them and saying, come buy, the price of Hilsa is down. As in, they used to tell them the price of Hilsa fish was down that particular day. Householders could talk of nothing but Hilsa fish. People staying in the houses, they were just talking about Hilsa fish and they did not have any other topic to talk about. How much did you pay for that Hilsa? You wouldn't believe it if I told you. So this woman here, she asks this person, how much did you pay for that Hilsa? And this man, he says, you would not even believe if I told you. Probably he would have bought it for a very lesser price. And in the palace too, the courtiers could discuss nothing but Hilsa fish. In the palace of the king, the courtiers who were there, what is the meaning of courtiers? Who are courtiers? Courtiers are the people who accompany the king or the queen, or they have a job there in the palace. Okay. So courtiers, they had nothing to discuss except for Hilsa fish. Now, this courtier is saying, Your Majesty, you should have seen the huge Hilsa I caught. It was, and then he was trying to tell the king about the big Hilsa fish he had caught. And then he was about to say something else, but then what happens? Let's see. Stop it! Are you a courtier or a fisherman? The king gets angry, because even he was tired of hearing about Hilsa fish all the time. And then in an angry mood he says, are you a courtier or a fisherman? Are you working in the river or the sea to catch Hilsa fishes? Or are you working in the court, in the palace? The courtier fell silent with downcast eyes. The king felt guilty. The courtier, just because of the scolding he got from the king, he fell silent. He kept quiet and he lowered his eyes. Downcast eyes means lowering the eyes like this. Alright. And the king immediately he felt guilty about scolding the courtier. I am sorry. I lost my temper. It is the season for Hilsa fish, and no one, not even Gopal, can stop anyone from talking about Hilsa fish. Not even for 5 minutes. And when the king felt guilty about scolding the courtier, getting angry on him, he immediately said, I am sorry that I scolded you, that I lost my temper, but actually I know that it is the season for Hilsa fish and everybody is talking only about Hilsa fish. Nobody can stop anyone from talking about Hilsa, not even Gopal. Now, who is Gopal? Gopal probably is a courtier of the court. We don't know yet. We'll read in the story. So the king explained that even Gopal can't stop anyone from talking about the Hilsa fish. Not even for 5 minutes. Even he can't stop anybody just for even 5 minutes to stop people talking about the Hilsa fish. Oh, I think I could, Your Majesty. And then Gopal exclaimed, he said, Oh, I think I can. I can stop people from talking about Hilsa fish. King says, Then let me see. You buy a huge Hilsa and bring it to the palace without anyone asking you a word about it. And then he throws a challenge. He gives a challenge to Gopal and he says, All right, if you're so confident, then let me see. You do one thing, you go and buy a Hilsa fish, a huge Hilsa fish, and bring it to the court. But nobody on the way should talk a word about the Hilsa fish which you caught. I accept the challenge, Your Majesty. And then Gopal says that I accept your challenge. I will do what you're saying. A few days later, why is your face half shaven? I am dressing up to buy a fish. This lady, probably Gopal's wife, after a few days, she sees Gopal doing something and then in a curious manner she asks, Why is your face half shaven? And Gopal says, I am dressing up to buy a fish. And then his wife asks, What's the matter with you? Why are you smearing yourself with ash? And then she sees Gopal doing something. He was kind of putting something on his face. So she asked, What's the matter with you? I mean, what are you up to? What are you doing? Why are you smearing yourself with ash? What is the meaning of smearing? Smearing means to coat or rub something carelessly over a surface. So she asks, Why are you coating or, rubbing ash on your face? I told you, I am dressing up to buy a Hilsa fish. And then Gopal again says, I just told you, I am dressing up, I am getting ready to buy a Hilsa fish. Listen to me, please. You can't possibly go out in those disgraceful rags. What are you up to? His wife tried to stop Gopal when he was going out of the house. And then she screams and she tries to plead and she says, Listen to me, please. Why are you going out in those rags? Disgraceful rags. Disgraceful as in kind of insulting, which doesn't bring grace to you. Or, insulting. And rags means torn, old, worn out clothes. So she says, Why are you going like this? You can't go out in such a manner. What are you up to? And then she asks, What are you thinking? What are you trying to do? Gopal says, How many times must I tell you? Woman, I am out to buy a huge Hilsa fish. And then he kind of, got angry and he said, How many times do I have to tell you, woman? I am going out to buy a huge Hilsa fish. It's happened to him. He's gone mad. And then his wife, she thinks that now he's gone mad. He's behaving in such a annoying, absurd manner, weird manner. I think that he's gone mad. Gopal bought the Hilsa fish and started walking towards the palace. And finally, Gopal goes to the market, buys the Hilsa fish and started walking towards the palace. Why was he going to the palace? Because he had to fulfill the challenge which the king had given him. Mother, look at that man. isn't he comical? And now, when he was passing the streets, there was this little boy. He asks his mother, he tells his mother, in fact, he says, "Mother, look at that man." Pointing towards Gopal, he says this, "Look at that man. Isn't he comical?" Comical means funny. He says, "Mom, isn't he looking funny?" Now, the other person on the street says, "He must be a madman." And then this other person, he says, probably whispering to his partner or to somebody else, he says, "He must be a madman. Probably he has lost his mind." And then the other man, he, counterbacked and he whispered back, "Hush, I think he's a mystic." And then he tried to silence the other person and he says, "Just speak softly or just keep quiet. I think he is a mystic." Who's a mystic? Mystic is a person who has some kind of magical powers, some mysterious powers. Alright? So this person says he might be a mystic. When Gopal reached the court, now Gopal had reached the court. What happens there? "What do you want?" The guards, they saw him and they asked him, "What do you want?" Gopal says, "I want to see the king." He demanded that he wanted to see the king. "You can't see the king. Get away with you." And the guard, he was annoyed. He was, in anger. He said to Gopal, "You can't see the king. Just go away from here." Gopal began to dance and sing loudly. Now, why did he do that? Probably to catch the king's attention. Let's read further. Inside the palace, "The man is crazy. Throw him out at once. I want to see the king. Let me in." And then inside the palace, the king was hearing this kind of voices. What were the voices? Somebody was saying, "The man is crazy." The other person was saying, "Throw him out at once." And then Gopal's voice was heard. He was saying, "I want to see the king. Let me in." He was pleading and probably demanding to see the king, pleading to the guards. Then the king ordered, "Bring that man to me at once." And king ordered to the guard, "Bring that man to me at once." And the guard says, "Yes, your majesty." Gopal was brought before the king. One of the courtiers, he recognized him, and then he says, "It's Gopal." The man has lost his mind. So the courtiers, they talk among themselves. It looks like that Gopal has actually lost his mind. "I think it's one of his crazy jokes." And then the other courtier says that he thinks that Gopal is, kind of doing some joke once again. It is some of his crazy jokes again. Now the king says, "All right, Gopal, out with it. Why are you dressed up in this ridiculous fashion?" Now the king says, "All right, Gopal, too much of the mess you have created, too much of drama you have created. Now you tell me." Out with it means, now tell me, why are you dressed like this, in this ridiculous fashion? Now, what is the meaning of ridiculous? Ridiculous means dirtily, shabbily, annoying fashion, annoying manner, okay? So now Gopal, when he was asked by the king, what did he reply? He said, "Your Majesty, you seem to have forgotten something." And then he says, "Your Majesty, it looks like that you have forgotten something." The king says, "Forgotten something?" The king tries hard to remember what was Gopal pointing at. And then Gopal says, "Strangely enough, no one seems to be interested in Hilsa fish today. From the market to the palace and in the court, not a soul has spoken a word about Hilsa fish." And then Gopal tells the king that it is strange but true. Nobody has asked a word about Hilsa fish to me. from the market, from the time I bought the fish from the market, throughout the way, till the palace, and even inside the court, not a soul, which means not a single person, has talked about Hilsa fish. But why? Because everybody's attention was at Gopal. Only then did the king remember the challenge he had thrown to Gopal. Ha ha! Well, Gopal, congratulations! You have achieved the impossible once again. And then the king says, he laughed and he says, very good, congratulations, Gopal. Again, you did something which was actually not possible. You have, got through the challenge. That's great. So with this, we end this chapter. I hope you have understood the chapter. I hope you have understood the funny part of this comic strip. Alright, now we will be doing the exercises.